The first major tournament of the North American Summer Hardcourt Swing came with one of the biggest surprise packages we've seen all year. And it got me thinking, was the blueprint for the Canadian Open title runs laid out weeks ago, or are we about to witness an entirely different Summer Hardcourt Swing from what we expected? And what are some of the craziest storylines going on in tennis at the moment? Before we get into it, I have to confess I'm on vacation right now and I actually forgot my camera at home, so you won't be seeing me in this video. But no worries, I'll be back soon for some extra special US Open coverage. So here's the thing, Alexei Popyrin has always had a great serve and a deadly forehand, but for some weird reason he never managed to pull it all together. Following his breakout year in 2019, Popyrin's first ATP title came in 2021 in Singapore. Being at the lower end of the top 100, Popyrin never quite took off, and if anything, his career kind of nosedived. He only won 5 ATP Tour-level matches in 2022 in what was one of his worst years on tour. Even when competing at the challenger level, Popyrin was still mostly losing. He just couldn't catch a break from all the losses and ended up falling outside the top 100. He came back stronger in 2023 with the title in Umag giving him a bit more confidence, and fast forward to this very moment, Popyrin's win percentage this year is the best of his career. At 25 years old, it's finally coming together. Here's a super quick recap of his title run. Popyrin entered the tournament as world number 62. He faced Tomas Machac in the first round in Montreal and only lost 1 point on his first serve. His game was compact all around. Well, apart from that one horrible service game where he served 4 double faults in a row to allow Machac to break. But apart from that, everything else was solid. Popyrin didn't go to the net much, but when he did, he was also clinical. And he didn't give away much on the baseline exchanges, making only 8 unforced errors in the entire match. In the end, it all led to a straight sets win over Machac. Popyrin then faced Shelton in the second round and, as usual, brought the heat on his first serve. But really, we had no idea an upset was brewing. With the first set level at 4-all, Popyrin broke Shelton late on before managing to serve it out. Both players couldn't be separated in the second, with Popyrin not being able to convert on breakpoints, and Shelton not even generating a single breakpoint all match. But it was the Aussie who edged Shelton in the tiebreak to take the match in straight sets. What happened to Shelton? Anyone? In the past couple weeks, I haven't noticed any particularly clear strategy for Shelton when it comes to return of serve, and that continues to be a problem for him. Popyrin was up against Dimitrov in the round of 16, and many fans feel like Dimitrov choked this one. Do I think so? Not 100%. Dimitrov did only manage to convert only 1 out of 9 breakpoints and held 3 match points, but I think we need to give credit to Popyrin for saving those match points in an incredible fashion. The first one was a big serve to jam up his opponent. The second was another powerful first serve out wide, which Dimitrov's backhand just couldn't handle. Maybe Dimitrov had a chance on the third breakpoint because Popyrin went down the tee and Dimitrov was able to put the ball back in play, but after a good anticipation on Popyrin's +1, Dimitrov missed on the backhand down the line. Popyrin eventually recovered to force a decider and ended up winning the match. As much as you might be tempted to say that Dimitrov choked, especially considering his status as the obvious favorite and maybe even one of the contenders for the title, you have to give Popyrin credit for his resilience. With the win, Popyrin became only the 3rd Aussie to claim top 10 wins on hard and clay courts in the same season at ATP Masters 1000s, after Leighton Hewitt did it in 2000 and Nick Kyrgios accomplished the feat in 2015. Popyrin was then up against a man who had won their 3 previous encounters in the quarterfinal. Hurkacz had been impressive since returning from injury, and again, it looked like Popyrin's dream run would come to an end here after seeing Hurkacz lead by a set and a break. With the crowd now more involved, Popyrin started playing more aggressively and was able to force a tiebreak, which he ended up winning. Both players had plenty of breakpoint opportunities in the third set, but at 5-all, Hurkacz finally gave in at Popyrin's 9th time asking. The Aussie then went on to serve it out after a grueling 2 hours and 47 minutes. Popyrin was up against Korda in the semis. Korda had been in red-hot form, winning his last 8 matches in a row, and had just gotten his 2nd top 10 win of the year after downing Alexander Zverev in the quarterfinal. At this point, I thought the match was anyone's, and really, that's how it looked at first. Both players exchanged breaks early on, but at 5-all, Korda broke Popyrin and had a chance to serve for the set. But guess what? He then plays a loose game, which ends with a double fault to allow Popyrin to draw back level. Now I have to point out, Korda didn't win a single point in that tiebreak. Come the second set, we already knew the player who looked like he wanted it more. Watching the match, I noticed that Popyrin kept going for bigger shots on the pressure points, and the reward was a straight sets victory for the Aussie. I thought it was kind of a disappointing performance from Korda, but seeing that he was coming off the back of a Washington title run and has played a lot of matches over the past few weeks, it's not totally surprising. Popyrin then faced Rublev in the final in Montreal, and Andre was the obvious favorite for the title. He's been having a weird year with mental breakdowns on one end of the spectrum and incredible performances on the other end. But after getting that much needed rest, Rublev showed up to Montreal and had been playing great tennis all week. The highlight, beating Jannik Sinner to become the only player to defeat both Sinner and Alcaraz this year. And he did it in tournaments where both Sinner and Alcaraz were the defending champions, no less. Unfortunately for the Russian though, he started the final in the worst possible way, losing the first 7 points and double faulting on break points. Before we knew it, Popyrin was up 2 breaks as the first set quickly slipped away from Rublev. In fact, it only lasted 35 minutes. Popyrin got the early break yet again in the second, but Rublev started digging deep and was able to break back to level the set at 3-all. But yet again, what followed was a sloppy game that allowed Popyrin to break back. Rublev did try to save a couple of match points, but ultimately fell short as Popyrin clinched the title in Montreal. So what were the key factors in this final? Rublev might have been dealing with some stomach issues in the final and wasn't anywhere close to his best. However, the critique for his performance, apart from his serve falling off, would majorly be owed to his inability to find other tactical ways of point construction, apart from trying to blast Popyrin off the court. In my opinion, Rublev should have worked more with varying the pace and should have also tried creating sharper angles on the cross-court exchanges, rather than going for power every single time. For Alexei Popyrin, he's been growing as a player, and I think one of the major factors behind his Montreal title run was his mental resilience. I also think that he was more patient in his point construction and did a good job on the runaround forehand when going on the offensive. His backhand, which happens to be his weakest shot, pretty much held up, and when on the defensive, Popyrin was willing to track down balls from the back of the court. He was also coming up with a lot of slices to keep Rublev from coming forward. But someone watching this might say, yeah, whatever. Popyrin benefited from a weak field in Montreal because many players didn't show up because of the Olympics. My answer to that would be, why don't you take a look at the ranks of the players he defeated en route to the title? 3 top 10 players and 5 top 20 players. It doesn't get any better than that. Popyrin won this tournament, guys. He dug himself out of a hole on multiple occasions, and let's be fair, he elevated his game across the board. One could also say that the weather and the congestion in the draws also led to a drop in quality in the tournament, but come on. Who would have thought that Popyrin would get a Masters 1000 title before players like Casper Ruud and De Minaur, or before any of these other top 20 guys? Even among the Aussies, one would have bet on Kyrgios, De Minaur, or Bernie Tomic back in the day to win a Masters 1000 title first. Where is Bernie these days? Anyway, when you look at it from another angle, we've now had 6 different champions in the 6 different Masters 1000 tournaments this year. When you take a look at the players in the top 100 and compare them with the ones in the top 10, there's really not a huge gap between them when it comes to their skill set. What separates most players from the game's best is consistently producing the best performances week in, week out. Popyrin has already suffered a hangover loss to Gael Monfils in Cincinnati, but the good news for him is that after reaching a career-high world number 23, he'll now be seeded at the US Open and won't have to worry about running into Novak early, considering that was the case at the Australian Open and Wimbledon this year. Now here comes the big question. With the big serve and forehand and mental toughness now added to the equation, does Popyrin have staying power to be a top 25 player? I think so. I also think he can cause upsets every now and then. He's always had that ability, low-key. With the title win, Popyrin becomes the first Australian since Leighton Hewitt at Indian Wells in 2003 to win a singles Masters 1000 title. He's also the lowest ranked man to win the Canadian Open since Michael Pernfors in 1993. Pernfors was ranked number 95 when he won the title back then. And for the first time since the 2012 Paris Masters, we saw 3 unseeded players reach the semifinals of a Masters 1000 tournament. But before I wrap up my thoughts on the Canadian Open, I want to quickly touch on some other players. Korda has now broken into the top 15, but I think his stealing is still a lot higher. He seems to have some of the cleanest technique out there and has beautiful ground strokes not many elite players even have. Yet he seems not to be able to make the most out of his talent. Standing at 6'5", you'd expect him to have one of the best serves in the world, like say someone like Taylor Fritz, who stands at the same height. But that just hasn't been the case. He just doesn't have the same pop on the serve to earn him many free points. And when you look at his movement, he seems exploitable, especially on defense. Not being one of the fastest movers also makes him limited in his ability to turn defense into offense too. For the hardcourt specialist himself, it's now back-to-back losses in the opening round on his favorite courts. I did a deep dive recently on Medvedev, which you should totally check out if you haven't already. After losing to Davidovich Fokina in Montreal, Medvedev has now lost to Lehechka, who just came back from injury too. Now Medi has finalist points to defend at the US Open, and seeing that he won't be one of the top 4 seeds will only make things more difficult for him. At this point, I'm at a loss for what he needs to do to turn his season around. Going from the eye test, he looked unusually slow against Lehechka in Cincinnati, and for a guy who's literally a human backboard, you could just tell that something was off. He only landed 44% of his first serves and hit 7 double faults against Lehechka, with one of them leading to a break. Medi was spraying errors all evening, and when his frustration boiled over, he even received a code violation yet again because of something he said. Medvedev responded by saying that he was only talking to himself, but umpire Aurélie Tort quickly doubled down on her decision, saying that Medi had made some unruly remarks. The code violations are becoming more and more frequent for Medvedev, and it's something we might want to keep an eye on. For Tsitsipas, he won his opening round match in Cincinnati against Struff before losing to Jack Draper. Tsitsipas recently split with his dad after his opening round loss against Kei Nishikori at the Canadian Open, and the way and manner in which he did it was kinda nasty. He said he was disappointed in his dad, and he deserved a coach who was willing to listen to him. Although he released a long statement apologizing after, he says that his father will stick to only being his father and no longer be his coach. I've personally been an advocate of Tsitsipas having another coach outside of his father, but I didn't expect things to go sour like they did. In my opinion, having a coach outside of his father makes him more independent, and at some point he really needed to make that move. Tsitsipas has quickly found a replacement for his dad and is now working with Greek Davis Cup captain Dimitris Hadjinkolaou. The word on the street is that their partnership will continue beyond Cincinnati. Hopefully, this brings some stability to his camp. And even if his new coach has the same advice as his dad, you'd bet it evokes a different response from Tsitsipas. We also need to give a shout out to Kei Nishikori because he became the lowest ranked man to reach a Masters 1000 quarterfinal since 1994 as world number 576, and it's truly been incredible seeing him back at this level after 5 years. But I found something really shocking about him, but before we talk about that, let's see what's up with someone who's been having a real rough patch. From last year up until the beginning of this season, Adrian Mannarino has been playing his best tennis at the age of 36. He'd reached a new career high of world number 17, and he was also the #1 French tennis player. But since the early part of the season, Mannarino has been on a terrible losing streak. From the round of 32 at Indian Wells to 's-Hertogenbosch, Mannarino recorded 7 consecutive losses, which means that he didn't win a single match on clay, if I'm not mistaken. Mannarino then managed to stop the rot after winning his opening round match in 's-Hertogenbosch, but he then lost the following match, and since then, it's been another 9 consecutive losses, with the most recent loss coming against Nuno Borges in Cincinnati. Looking at these losses, you get the feeling that the end is near for the 36-year-old. But seeing how much he has surprised everyone in his career, I wouldn't rule out one last surprise from the Frenchman. Anyways, switching over to the WTA, Jessica Pegula became the first woman to defend her National Bank Open title since Martina Hingis in 2000. It's Pegula's 6th WTA title and 3rd 1000 title. Just like on the men's side, the field in Toronto was weaker than usual, with Iga and several of the other top players withdrawn due to the Olympics. Pegula took full advantage and didn't face a player inside the top 20 en route to the title. Who did she beat in the final? An impressive Amanda Anisimova, who had taken down 4 top 20 players in Kasatkina, Kalinskaya, Sabalenka, and Emma Navarro to reach her first WTA 1000 final. In that final, Pegula showed once again that her defensive ability is one of the best on tour. Her ability to transform and switch from defense to offense was a major factor behind her win in the final. I mean, look at these points right here. In the end, Pegula got the W in 3 sets. But credit to Anisimova for an incredible week, and personally, I'm so happy to see her playing her best tennis once again, considering everything she's been through over the past few years. In fact, last May she took a break from tennis due to burnout and for the sake of her mental health. Let's also remember that a week before her 18th birthday, Anisimova lost her dad and former coach, and it derailed her for quite a while. Now, her performance in Toronto is significant because her final run means that she's back in the top 50. Being one of the best ball strikers on the WTA Tour, I'm sure we'll be seeing her giving the top girls a run for their money in the coming months. And she only turns 23 at the end of the month, so it's safe to say that we haven't seen the best of her just yet. But some fans believe we can't say the same for Naomi Osaka. Naomi looked unstoppable against Ons Jabeur in the opening round in Toronto. She was totally ripping the balls and blasting Ons off the court, and it looked like she would go on to make a deep run once again on her favorite surface. But then she met Elise Mertens in the second round, an opponent who showed that to beat Osaka, you just have to move her around the court. Mertens used the backhand slice to great effect to draw out errors from Osaka, and it worked wonders. But perhaps the even bigger factor was that Mertens was serving lights out and Naomi couldn't do much about it. In the end, it was another heartbreaking loss for Osaka. And to add insult to injury, she wasn't given a wild card in Cincinnati, so she had to go through qualies and ended up losing to Ashlyn Kruger. With the US Open around the corner, one would be hoping that loss will be a wake-up call for Naomi. But while everyone is slugging it out for ranking points in preparation for the US Open, one player who happens to be the greatest we've ever seen is living his best life and could care less about ranking points. But best believe that when the time comes, Novak will be ready to defend his US Open title, and he'll probably use the earlier rounds to get some reps. So if you see him losing a set or two early on, don't be fooled, because we've seen it happen before. For Alex de Minaur, he'll be back for the US Open, and we just did a deep dive on him, so check it out if you haven't seen it already. Speaking of the US Open, the wildcards were announced a couple days ago. And you have to give it to the tournament organizers for showing some love to a few former champs. Bianca Andreescu, Dominic Thiem, and Stan Wawrinka received wildcards. Anisimova also got a wildcard, and so did Chris Eubanks, who has since fallen out of the top 100. But just one question. Why did Kei Nishikori not receive a wild card, especially considering his performance in Montreal? Is there something I'm missing here? Still outside the top 200, it looks like Nishikori will be looking to build his ranking with some challengers for the remainder of the year. As play wraps up in Cincinnati, it's surely a good time to like this video and smash that subscribe button, because you know Courtside Tennis will always deliver. And in the meantime, check out our Discord channel for the latest tennis news and insight, plus a chance to interact with me and come up with ideas for our next videos. We have some great content coming up for the US Open, and I can't wait to share it with all of you. Until next time, keep swinging.